For more than 2 years, a lot of people around the world got shut out from venues and get-togethers with friends and families. A lot of people who, probably for a long time, had had a slight different view on life, and other types of philosophies and thoughts that did not get along with the official narrative, regarding the deeper and more complex questions about a lot of things, and suddenly found themselves at a apparent crossroads where it was either the blue or the red pill. Follow the rabbit, or continue with your 9-to-5 life. Friends and loved ones who were not along for the same ride, and chose another direction, but things didn't just end there. Suddenly, you were shut out, made fun of, and attacked for your opinions. The ones in charge got us all exactly where they wanted. Divided and conquered. All too often, it has been said that the years during pandemic were the worst years for many people around the world. The most dangerous virus of all times ravaged. One was no longer allowed to hang out with friends, go shopping or to the movies. One had to work from home as much as possible, and at the slightest sneeze, you had to isolate yourself for I don't know how many days, and top that with so and so many tests and whatnot, before you were even allowed to step outside your door, wearing a mouth diaper and plastic gloves. A lot of people were terrified and scared, and fear took over, which quickly turned into hatred. Another part of the world's population began to strongly question both society and the system we live in during these years, how the guidelines and restrictions from the ones in charge that tried to imprison us were far too extreme, and that common sense and critical thinking and information seeking had been thrown out the window, and asked themselves how people could just blindly obey. Many belonging to this part of the population quickly became the black sheep, and were likewise attacked by everyone from family members, friends, acquaintances, colleagues, and strangers online. A scenario that led to that a lot of lonely and rejected individuals wanted to seek out new groups to belong in, where they could find like-minded people, and were socially accepted for their choices, philosophies, life views, and opinions. The ones in charge got us all exactly where they wanted. Divided. And so also conquered. But then suddenly, from one day to another, the so-called pandemic disappeared, and there was no longer talk of keeping distance or taking the next injection, and family dinners were once again legal, and restaurants and entertainment businesses opened up like nothing had ever happened. Balloons and confetti, clowns and cotton candy, a lot of twinkling pretty lights. Look here. Come and see. The danger is over, there's nothing to see here. Move along, folks. Give them bread and circuses and they shall never revolt, wrote the Roman poet Juvenal, in his poem, Satire X, almost 2,000 years ago. His words are as true today as they were back then. Just as quickly as it had appeared, the awareness of many of the people who had nevertheless begun to lift their eyelids a bit from their slumber in the matrix, and the illusion had just slightly begun to crack before their eyes, quickly glued them back together, and replaced their concerns with war and misery, like showing a baby a lollipop when it starts crying. Distraction. From pandemic to war. People stood up together in solidarity and open arms, even the ones critical to the system. Almost everyone joined in. Because now, it was real. Many people quickly ran back to their friends and families, who had now left the door ajar, and somewhat half-welcomed them back, despite the lack of injections, passports, and mainstream opinions. Because now there was a terrible war going on, and it was for real. You were bullied and attacked for 2 years, but like a stupid dog with wagging tail, you happily ran back to those who previously turned their backs on you. Humans are basically quite cowardly creatures who, without their pack or a sense of togetherness and belonging, falter as soon as the slightest breeze blows. You want to be surrounded by other people, regardless of whether they think or feel like you, as long as you have a shoulder to lean on when things gets tough. Basically, man is selfish, and thinks only of himself in most situations. The so-called pandemic is now over, soon also the war, and the blue and yellow flags are starting to lose wind, and new headlines are just around the corner. Headlines that are already slowly but surely starting to seep out of the crack under the door in front of us. Behind the scenes, authorities around the world have started placing orders for yet another vaccine, a medicine that will save us from the next horror scenario. New doses must be distributed, and money must once again be brought home. Individuals will once again be the ones to bear the costs, and if there aren't enough people who will voluntarily queue up and roll up their sleeves for yet another injection to protect themselves and their beloved fellow citizens, from either the Planet of the Apes, or the 80s disease who will make a comeback, then the global powers will tighten both freedom of movement and freedom of expression, and restrictions will be put in place for yet another round. Once again, you will be bullied, shut out and attacked for your opinions. Your family members, friends, acquaintances, colleagues, and strangers online will probably once again turn their backs on you. And after that round is finished, will you then once again run back just as the last time, wagging your tail when the door opens ajar? Will the other groups, the alternative groups that let you in the first time, welcome you back and support you, this time as well? Now when it suits you. When you're no longer welcome at the dinner table with your mainstream peeps. Just like the absurd spectacle we see all over the world right now, it is the law of the jungle that applies. Strongest wins. Each to its own. You save your own skin, but like to stand comfortable and protected in a group when the wind blows a little harder. You adjust to what is perceived as most favorable at the moment, and opinions change depending on which room you're in. Friendships are not important, but instead having as many people as possible accepting you, so that you can get as many pats on the back as possible, and feel important. And good. Everyone wants to be thought of as a good person. Just like that stupid dog. Dog owners only get a pet for their own gain. But the dog doesn't care. He only wants to be a good boy. Human action that is solely guided by what the outside world looks at the moment, is not a sustainable or long-term way of life, in a world that has begun to spin as fast as it does now. Never has there been so much new information to deal with every minute, day in and day out, and never before have truths become lies, and lies become truths as quickly as they born, live, and die, today. To then flat around and replace people left and right, depending on which opinion corridor one pleases to walk around in during the day, is nothing more than a spineless behavior. But what can one really expect from the cowardly human species? The elite, on the other hand, they know exactly what they're doing. They also stick to their selfish little clique, and they think long term. They know in detail every move that is going to make them win out there on the chessboard, and they don't either switch opinion corridors or throw people under the bus, as soon as it starts blowing a little in the branches above their heads. They stand firm in their truth, and to their goal. Because they know that their selfish little clique is far too valuable to waste, and they, just like us, also have an inner longing to get those pats on the back. To feel important, talented, and good. So stop acting like a dog, and instead, think like a cat. Because you will not be welcomed back when the monkeys attack. Law of the jungle. Each to its own.